How you doing, buddy? I think we've succeeded in being live. Alright, can't see the screen, but I think I'm framed a little better to see my feet there. How you doing, buddy? Come on out into the sunshine. Morning. I got a lot of glare. Pretty hard for me to see the screen, but we're going to practice some of our stances for our true beginners. And I'm just going to be checking in now on my stream on my phone, so I can see I can see myself doing one of them. In case there's any questions or comments that I can address. I'm here with my teacher, and right here on Sunday Farm in front of the school. Again, Facebook Live doesn't allow me to use any microphones. I may be 14 feet from the iPad. It's a little bit windy. It's not terribly windy. And I'm not going to be raising my voice a lot, so the volume is what it is. Lately I've been post-producing these and increasing the volume about 20%, so perhaps the archive version will be just like a little bit better. But this is the trade-off between trying to reach people live and recording. When I record, I can use the microphone and the noise cancellation, and it works out pretty fine now. But then, of course, very few people see it or know to tune in. So here's the balance. Anyway, so I figure we'll stretch a little bit, and then we'll review some of the other stances, and we'll get into a new stance today. This is for true beginners, injured, too sedentary, post-surgical, overweight, feeling like you're older, never practiced anything like this before. This should all be working for you. And the whole idea is just to not have our ego be part of it. It's not about doing the lowest stance, the longest stance, the deepest stance, the most duration, the most flexible. That I just want to be doing some stance training. For example, you know, you might see a horse stance, you know, in training looking something like this, and the horse stance that we did on our inaugural Matt Stamp inspired episode looked like this. They're very easy to see that one of them's cool, one of them's easy. This is simplistic, why bother? But hopefully the simplicity is what encourages you to actually try it. Is that right, Saki? We're going to get the cat stance, okay? All right. So I've separated my feet here. I'd like you to be on a stable surface, level, probably warmer than mine. But because of the needs of filming and stuff, I'm on this little slope. It's not really ideal, but it's what we have to work with. Kind of wondering for today if I could just, maybe I could just turn it a little bit to where it's a bit more level. Maybe we'll luck out that way. I'll give you a little bit more of a view of the spruce than the birch. Yeah, a little bit closer to level here for me. Yeah, so maybe that's a way to work. That has me facing more into the sun, which I guess is part of the reason I go over there, but I just dropped my visor here. So, just a little bit stretching, right? So I'm going to shift my weight to one leg, so the practice there is to track the knee towards the toe. So as that, all my toes are pointing forward, so I'm parallel footed facing the camera. And as I shift to one leg, I want to make sure that my knee doesn't shift to the left with me, but my knee reaches towards the toes in that direction. Of course, that knee bends it a little as I take the weight. So my weight moves over, my knee, my femur point this way. Come on, Saki. Right. Now this one is relatively unweighted, and I'm going to lift the heel, press the heel down, lift the toe, press the toe down, lift the heel, press the heel down, lift the toe, press the toe down, lift the heel, and I'm just lifting that heel, keeping the toe and maybe part of the ball of the foot on the ground, kind of like I'm in high heels, and getting the stretch, maybe all the way through the low back, maybe a bit in the hip, maybe the psoas. Certainly not a massive stretch, but that may be just what you need or just what you're able to do. And down. So I lift the heel, press the heel down, lift the toe, which of course straightens the knee. Maybe it doesn't get straight, but it straightens the knee. And I'm lifting that toe towards my own shin to get that stretch. Right? Also maybe in the lower back, maybe more in the calf, maybe down to the Achilles, maybe just through the foot. And release. So lift the heel. When I press the heel down, I imagine there's a little bit of resistance, right? So, you know, a bag full of, who knows, whatever you like, jelly, and I press down, and it's gonna leave the bag and give me room for my heel to find the earth, but it takes a little bit of continuous pressure. Not a lot, not a crazy amount, that's why I say jelly. It's a little bit more fun to imagine, a little more whimsical, takes the stress out of it, right? And press that down. Same thing when I lift the toes. Now I have a bag under the ball of the foot. And I said press the toe down, but you could press the ball of the foot down or the toe or both or one followed by the other. All different options. You'll feel slightly different through the leg. But I just mean the front part of the foot, the toe side, as compared to the heel side. So I'm just saying toe, but whatever works for you. Thank you, Saki. He's heading off now to hunt. And press down slowly, slowly, slowly. Right, so that my foot or part of the foot displaces that sort of bag of viscous resistance. Lift, down, lift, down. Good. Good, we're gonna change it now, so we're gonna lift the heel. Meanwhile, we spent the whole time on this leg bent, right? Knee over the ball of the foot, femur tracking in the same direction as the toe from heel to toe points, same direction as the foot from heel to toe points. And so I've just sat in this the whole time I'm stretching here. I'm not particularly deep, but that might be exactly the stance training that I'm ready for, that I need today. For some of you, it might be more athletic. This could just be a little warm-up or injury assessment warm-up, where I want to move the tissues just to see where I'm at. Have I pulled something here? Have I torn something here? Is something just a little sore? Is that lactic acid? So I put myself in a little bit of a stretch, and I go through a little bit of mobility to help me self-assess. So from here, I've lifted the heel. I've kind of left it there where I chatted, and I'm going to circle the knee. So there's almost no weight on this foot, and I'm just moving my knee. And as I do this, the heel rises and falls, but not fully. So I kind of feel like in profile here that the knee travels in this circle the way I imagine like a steering wheel on a bus or a truck, you know, because those will be kind of canted like this. And so I'm kind of circling my knee where it's high as it's towards the camera, low as it's away from the camera at 6 o'clock, high at the top, right? So I'm trying to relax this leg as much as I can. So I don't have a grinding sense. Meanwhile, I've just stayed here. Good. And then I'll press down. Good. And I'll come up on the toe. Here. Good. And down. This time I'm going to open on the heel. Kind of like where we did the stretch for the adductors the other day, where we came down this way, which maybe we'll get to here in a moment. And from here I want to, remember I'm sat in this leg, checking here as I turn more open if my knee has tracked towards the big toe of my foundation leg or even past it. That's not what we want, of course. And from here I'm going to try and move my hip joint on this unweighted side. And again in a circle, right? That's not going to have an awful lot of movement show up in the rest of the leg, but your mind may go into the rest of the leg trying to figure out how to move the hip and kind of reach for the big toe or reach for the calf or the knee to try and get the movement. And while it's connected, the hip, to these elements down, further from the core, what I want here is to be moving from the hip and have those move as a result, however small, of my hip movement. Okay, last we'll do that stretch where we're on the heel and tipping over. Ideally here we're sink. I think we did this last time in a wider stance where we can sink further to get to those adductors. Adductors are the muscles on the side of the leg that help the leg come back into the center line. Meaning coming in this way. Good. So I'm going to just switch here to the other side. Up, down, up, down, up, toe up. I'm going to just see if I can check in on anybody here. Wow, Dr. Bowie is with us. That's fantastic. Hey Patrick, haven't seen you in a long time. Hi Deborah. Hello to the arts, the master art, or Julie, or whomever is on, I don't know. Hooray. Good. And Gwen is here. Hello, hello. Yeah, if you guys want to be inspired, check out Conrad Bowie's page, Tiga Tactical. Or wait, is it Tiga Tactics? He'll write it in the comments, I'm sure. But certainly follow his Facebook page to see how much better you can look, how much more flexible you can be, how much more practice you can do. He's the bar that we all reach for. Good. Really, really straightforward practice. And of course I'm stretching this side, paying attention to the varying joints, but meanwhile I've just spent time on the single weighted side. And while I'm not all that deep, this might be, 2 minutes of this, you might be starting to feel that burn. Maybe particularly if you did the stance training with me the last couple of days. You might have awoken today and felt, oh boy, my legs feel a bit more alive than usual. Good. So I'm going to go through that bag of jelly. Good. Up. Bag of jelly. Check in, especially if you keep visually looking down at your feet and legs to see where things are. If you've slowly kind of lost your focus on vertical posture, so you might, I'll just keep going, but you might find yourself as you check in over time sort of standing this way, where my shoulders are a little bit getting forward to my hips, my neck is kind of curled down. I don't really see the horizon easily. So every time just checking back in on the vertical posture. And if I look down, I might very well change my posture. That's not ideal, but when I do come back up, I want to recommit to what vertical is. Good. Good. So now I'm going to keep with the heel up and circle the knee. Notice I didn't say make as fast a circle as you can, or as many as you can, or as big as I'm doing. No ego, no competition, no contest, just health, just presence in the body that may not measure up to your idea of athleticism or health. Often there's this, like for example, Dr. Bowie, we can look at somebody like him and say, oh, it's so inspiring. Look at, he has all these different arts he does, and he's healing people for a living, and he's teaching all the time, and you can see he's practicing on his own, and he has all these ranks and titles and certificates and all that kind of stuff. And that could be inspiring, but that could also be the reason that you don't get off the couch. Are you kidding me? There's no way. And you, binge watch another episode of, season of something. And that's where our ego interferes with our body's health. And that is going to be the basis of the rest of the health of the being, the psyche, the emotions, the spirit, and so the mind. So while we can draw inspiration from things, often people will see something that is called by many inspirational, they'll see that as a reason not to do it. I'll never get that low. I'll never do it that much. I'll never have abs like that. I'll never kick that high. I'll never go to class that often, and so forth. And so remembering here, I haven't said do the biggest circles. I haven't said go fast. I haven't said do 3,000. I didn't say do this every day for an hour. I just said try a few circles with me while you just bend this leg just a little bit. Good. I'm going to set the heel down through the jelly if you want, pivot, and again as I pivot on that heel, checking in, has this tracked my knee towards the arch side of my foot, or am I okay? Good. So here I go with the hip. Of course, I call this the true beginner's stance training. Stances are the true basis of any martial art. And the true beginner does not mean a first day student, although it certainly might, it welcomes them. But a true beginner can be a really high compliment to an objectively deserving master or veteran of the studies. So a true beginner should be an invitation to all. Of course, you could be at home saying, I already had my workout today. I have 3 black belts hanging in my closet for different classes I go to, and following this and saying, well, if we're going to do such a simple thing, I'm also going to do these other things, or I'm going to do this very low, or do twice as many. And you certainly can do that, but my invitation here is just do exactly what I'm doing and enter into the simplicity. Good. I'm going to step out just a little bit wider. And good. So it's not just tip here, tip without twist, it's sink here. Good. Okay. So we'll just review horse. Bending the knees, sinking the tail, making sure that the knees don't track inward. If you feel them tracking inward, you could practice tightening the buttocks to see if that helps draw the knees back. Very unlikely that they're going to track inwards if you just come down an inch or two, as I have here. Eyes to the horizon, head suspended from above, shoulders melting, breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. Certainly, of course, different breathings can be practiced when we're in this stance. I'm just recommending something. Shoulders over the pelvis, pelvis over the feet. Weight evenly distributed through the feet. I don't want to feel like I'm on my heels or my toes or cheating to the left side or the right or what have you. Nice practice if you're going into a lower horse stance than I'm showing now is to just check in with the knees. Are they bearing weight, or is the weight passing through the knees into the feet? And you'll feel this as pressure maybe behind the kneecap, kind of pushing out from below the kneecap towards the face of the kneecap. And that's a sign that your structure, your alignment, your stance is asking the knees to hold the weight. And the knees aren't designed to hold the weight. They're designed to fold the limbs and allow the weight to pass through. When I'm standing, it's my weight that's passing through the knees. When I'm kicking, it's the force that I'm trying to drive from the rest of my body's action, into the foot, into the target. Very similar process. And this gives me, I can do this for a whole lot longer than I can kick, right? I can do 200 kicks and I'm tired, I'm done. But I could stand here for the amount of time it takes me to do 200 kicks. I can stand here many dozens of times longer than that. I don't know how long 200 kicks takes. Let's say 4 minutes, something like that. I could definitely stand here for 8 minutes. I mean, most of us probably do just cooking or something. You find you're washing dishes, standing there for a few minutes, folding laundry. But if I'm practicing paying attention to the knees, are they in a healthy place? Are the feet bearing the weight? Are are they delivering what passes through the knees into the target, or in this case the earth, right? You know, where the energy is received. Good. I'll see if there's any questions or comments, if I can. I don't see anything. Feel free to type anything that you have a question about or comment, and we'll switch into that crouch stance here. So I'm going to go just a little bit wider for the crouch stance. I'm going to turn my foot maybe 30 degrees, pivoting on my heel, maybe 40, 45 degrees, something like that should be okay as well. And I'm going to shift to this side. So again, as I shift, I want to make sure that that knee tracks with the foot. So let's say I turn 40 degrees, my femur is 40 degrees offset from where it had been when I was in that horse stance position. So I'm bringing the knee, and when I get as far as I get, I want to just check in that both my feet have stayed flat. Probably the weighted one stayed flat, but the extended one may not have, the one that has less of my weight. And I'm going to just fold my hamstring towards my calf, so that bends the knee, paying attention to where the knee is, and now paying attention to both feet, that they don't rise in the heel or roll. Nice practice with this is to try and keep your body upright as you sink, and try and rotate the trunk without untracking this knee, rotating the trunk to sort of observe the left side, if not the fully the left side, the left of center being where my horse stance had me here. And this is our dropping stance, crouch stance, tiger subduing stance. And as it's just a review, we'll switch to the other side. I'll go a little bit wider for me here, but oh, it's a little slopey there. Where can I make it work? That should be reasonable. So shift, feet, track, sink, hamstring towards calf, making sure that I'm not looking below the horizon. Sink. Now you could probably go lower if you look down and lean forward, but that's kind of discarding my principles in service of my ego. Because lower is better, that looks cooler, that's where the magazine takes a picture of you when you get that low. But I want to make sure that I never discard principles in service of ego. So even though I'm on camera and I'm a professional, it's very easy for me to be like, oh, I should at least show them how low I can go and how cool I can look. But the practice here is principles. Principles are verticality, the alignment. So shoulders over hips, hips supported by feet in this particular stance. That's a different way of supporting, a different architecture of support. And if I can, I'm going to turn this way without untracking this femur. Certainly, you'll often see, the fun practices of, the shapes as people come into these stances too. So again, it's really hard for me to try not to do the hands. I'm so used to, coming into a particular position with this. Good. So we'll come out there. I'm going to have a sip, see if there's any questions, and then we'll try a new stance. Hi, Kelly. Cheers. And cheers all the way to Arizona. So we'll do a little cat stance here. So I think I'll do cat stance kind of turned profile. So I'll start in my horse stance. Shifting the weight. Maybe we'll just do the weight shift a couple times. Making sure that I don't have any ankle or foot eversion or inversion. So the sole of the foot remains flat, stays flat, even though the experience of the ankle and the sole of the foot changes as the weight moves. Each time tracking the knee. And if you can, or breathing in somewhere low. At least in my mind, I'm imagining I'm breathing down to here. You might not quite feel that or know if you're capable, and that's okay. But part of what I want to do with my breathing is certainly bring it in to fuel the body for sure. But in terms of how it's related to the emotional, psychological, mental components, is that I want to bring the body, the breath, down into its center or thereabouts. That helps me to bring my attention there. And I want to make sure that my shifting is happening from this region. So just kind of lower trunk, belly button, belt, hips, anywhere in there is fine. We're not trying to be too specific about styles and the lexicography. Just somewhere from the lower regions. Most of us may find ourselves breathing up here, whether or not we're aware of it, fairly what we'd call a shallow breath. And the breathing coming in all this time, in through the nose, out through the mouth, finding its way into the center, can help me to bring my awareness there, or help to anchor my awareness in my lower center. And that's where I'm going to catalyze my movement from. In this case, it's a shift. I know I have other work to do to track the knee, pay attention to the feet, keep the alignment, the principles, right? The head suspended, shoulders melting. But I want to make sure that, as best I can, the movement, the weight shift, in this case being the movement, is catalyzed in this region, right? So that, for example, I'm not moving with my upper chest to shift to the side, or I'm not kind of more like tipping my torso to go to the side. I'm not pushing my knee over and chasing the knee. I'm shifting. Additionally, you can check in that as you shift, right, this leg is bent, and as I shift, this leg straightens. But does that straightening make me kind of rise, and do I stay risen? Or, for example, does this shift in this direction make me rise, and then I settle? So do I have this sort of up, down, which I think I'm exaggerating here. Do I have this up, down? And if I do, that's okay. That's fine. It's more important that we have our feet good, our knees good. But if I have the feet good, the knees good, the alignment, I'm trying to get the breathing going, I can additionally check in that I have an even shift. So my head gains no more altitude as I go from side to side. Just like another little detail we can work on when we're at that point, if we get to that point. It's certainly perfectly fine to come up and come down, and that can be a nice exercise for the muscles in the legs, to strengthen them, bring them through a bit more range of motion under some duress. But if we get to the point that I can do the basics, something to pay attention to is trying to raise my voice because the wind picked up. But trying to keep myself even in the shift. And that's a pretty nice quality, keeping stance work in general. Not a bad thematic thing. So I'm going to shift to one leg. And I'm going to float the heel, kind of like we did in that warm-up. And then I'm going to step the toe out. So I'm bent in this leg. Not all that much. Tracking the knee. Right, so the femur points in the direction that the foot points. From heel to toe is towards camera, and from hip to knee is also towards camera. And I want to feel like those two lines are parallel. That keeps my knee healthy. And then I've just stepped this foot very lightly, kind of like in this breeze. If there was a piece of paper, I drop something in my pocket, and I just kind of put my foot on it, like, until I can bend down and pick it up, or ideally you have kids around until they come over and pick it up. I'm not like, stepping on a spider or something. I'm not, trying to break an acorn under my foot or crack some ice, to get a good Instagram picture. I'm just like, oh, let me just really just get the weight on my foot there. I'm not trying to step on that with weight and maybe slip. So it's this kind of quality of just resting the weight of the foot through the ball of the foot, maybe the ball and the toes. I'm not trying to pull my toes away. And I'm here. So this is what we call an empty stance, meaning I have this sort of empty of weight leg, and there's a variety of empty stances. This is called Malbu or cat stance often. Goes by some other names too, but this is an idea. And I made a few notes, so maybe we'll go over those and talk about some of the other things too. And I don't know how tough that was for you, so I'm going to switch. Just maybe you're ready for a switch. Good. So I'm not excited about getting that foot where it goes. I'm careful and considerate about putting my weight, building a foundation in this leg. And that foundation is built in my mind as well. That's why I talked about keeping the principles. And then when this foot has to pivot, right? So in the pivot and the step, does that challenge this foundation? And it's okay if it challenges it, as long as the leg wins the challenge, the principles win the challenge. But I might not even notice that if I just shift and, oh, here's where the foot goes. I've already brought this knee in, right, to the medial side. So here's my principles, here's me sticking to the principles. Now that I've done that, hey, this other thing is step on that piece of paper. Lightly rest the foot on something to stop it moving. So there's a couple stories I've heard about the Chinese astrological chart, in which we have these different animals represent the 12 different years in the cycle. The first one being rat, and so we have pig and horse and monkey and a whole bunch of different animals in the whatever the group, and but there's no cat. There's no cat in the group. And one of the stories is that I think it was the Jade Emperor wanted to invite the animals to assign them the year, and put the rat in charge of inviting the animals, right? And the rat said, "Well, I'm not going to invite the cat. I mean, I'm a rat. I don't want the cat there." And so the cat didn't make it in time to be assigned a year in the astrological chart. And another version, I think, is the rat gave the cat the wrong day for the said it's Wednesday even though it was on Tuesday, something like that. And so the cat slept through that whole awarding a year to the animals, and the rat got it. I think another version is that maybe it's the same idea, that they're on their way to the meeting, and the rat and the cat, who are still friendly, decide to stand on the back of, I think it was the ox, a water buffalo, in order to cross a river. The rat's not going to be able to cross. The cat, as we know, the cats don't like water, just like the other story of the cat, sleeping through a day. Like, oh yeah, I could visualize that. And so they rode on the back of the water buffalo, the ox, and partway through, the rat pushed the cat off. And as the ox, the water buffalo, kind of got to the other end of the river, I think the story goes like about to be first, to be picked. The rat kind of ran from the neck to the ears, to the crown of the head, to the snout, to the nose, and like a fairy coming in, and the ramp was the head and the snout of, and so the rat made it across first, and the cat did not. Again, swept down river, I guess. So that was another cat story. You don't have to memorize that or anything, but maybe listen to the story got you to stand here for another few seconds, another 30 seconds. Good. So we'll switch. Pivot. Principles. Principles, 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 principles. Good. And we'll do a couple little variations here. I'll check in with you on the phone as well. I know you can barely hear me, John. I know. This is what Facebook Live does. I'm closer to the camera than I was the last couple times by 6 feet. It's a little bit windy, but not terrible. They don't let me use a microphone. This is our life. My plan is to post-produce it and bump the volume. I think my software lets me go like 20% higher, so I'll plan to do that. But log into my Patreon for stuff with better audio, or YouTube, sorry. So here I am in the cat stance, and I'm kind of facing myself about 90 degrees from where my foundation foot is. Again, tracking the femur. What I want to do now is by rotating the hip that has the weight, I'm going to float this foot, fully off the ground for a moment, and using this hip, I'm going to turn myself less than 90 degrees, so maybe 45 or so. Good. So I'm exaggerating, so it'll kind of look like that. I use future tense because I want to be able to remember to pay attention to my principles, pay attention to my foundation, not just say, oh, I know what we're doing, going here, and then your principles got run over. So when I do this, future tense, I want to pay attention to that leg. It tracks where it tracks, it stays where it stays, it remains bent, and I'm only moving from the foundation hip to be, rather than 90 degrees with my 2 feet, maybe 45 degrees offset or so. So I'm going to pivot, and that'll be a little different experience in the thigh. And now I'm generally in cat stance, what we'll be doing is facing the empty foot. So I'm facing this offset direction from here, just as I had been here. Okay. And that might be enough just to feel quite a bit different through the tissues of the leg. We use slightly different muscle groups. Different muscles are emphasized as we change this just by a little bit. And that might be enough. Sometimes I'll be in a stance and I'm kind of like, I'm at my end, I have to stop. And I might tell myself, let me vary the stance a little, and maybe I can eke out a little bit more practice safely, but by varying the challenge a little bit, and also giving myself mentally something else to do. Oh, I have to rebuild this, I have to watch for this, let me check this, and maybe I can just get 3% longer practice, right? And a little bit more varied. Sometimes I can't, but one of the nice things about having these varied stances is that they can support you doing stuff a little bit longer when you're ready. Good. Well, if anybody has any advice for getting the volume up on Facebook Live, please let me know. I don't know what the issue is, but essentially Facebook, at least on the iOS, and I'm using an iPad here, doesn't allow like an external microphone of any kind. And for whatever reason, it doesn't seem as good as even if I just recorded from my iPhone, my iPad camera and recorded this. I feel like this sounds better there than through Facebook. But at any rate, so I've gone, maybe 30 degrees here. So I'm going to go another 30 degrees. Same practice. That of course allows me to do a couple different versions as I go through. So from forward, I can go, this wouldn't be a cat stance here, but from that visualized position, I'd go 30, 30, and then complete the 90, and I'd have these 3 versions of the cat stance, which is differently open in my center line. You'll feel it in the kind of the navel and groin area, like, oh, I'm pretty wide open here. I feel a little bit defended here. The work here is pretty much the same. And you usually have a posture here, but we're trying to leave that out for this. Ooh, somebody just flew over. That's beautiful. You might see a hawk flying over here in a moment. Yeah, towards the birch. And into the birch. Maybe you guys caught that. So we'll switch, taking our time to track. So here's my horse stance, and I'm starting at my 90. So one of the ideas in a cat stance is, we don't really see a cat standing this way, or I don't think anything really like it. But the kind of qualities of it are sort of becoming small, or crouching before explosively expanding, right? Leaping. And so we can feel this stance as a like a compression of a spring, and that'll be all the more notable when we're doing a much lower version of the stance, when we're sunk in like so. But we should still feel it now. So I'm sunk in, I'm small, and that's one half of the equation. The other half is unsink, or spring, or pounce, or leap, or something, and become large. So there's a Shaolin phrase, I think a Shaolin phrase, shrink like a cat and explode like a tiger, right? To give you that idea. So what we're doing here is modeling the idea of a cat and its behavior and instincts and qualities, as opposed to mimicking its physical shape, right? So a cat stance would probably be on 4 limbs, not 2, or really kind of on 1. I've seen a cat stand on 2 legs, but never on 1. So this is as far from mimicry, I think, as we might get. But the kind of attitude, the visualization is really nice. This sense of becoming small, which could certainly be defensive, and that defensiveness can also be the precursor to the offensive explosion, the rapid change of shape. If you've ever tried to stroke a cat, along their back who doesn't want to be, you'll do this, and the time it takes you to start to move the hand, they change their shape, right? Their spine just bows, and there's this bite in the spine, and you kind of can't increase your contact pressure. And the cat might just be walking too. They're busy doing something else. They don't see it. They just feel a nice tinge in practice, and then they just change their shape. Like, no thanks, right? Similarly, a cat will do that kind of going through a small space and stuff. They have these whiskers, the width of their body, and when their head goes first, they know if that's something that they can fit through, at their widest. And so that kind of quality of sort of becoming small defensively, I think is really kind of inherent in the cat stance, right? And of course, this leg being empty really is in a great position for me to pick it up to defend something, right? You're trying to get my leg and I can quickly move it. You're trying to kick, for example, at me, and me being able to check it and batter it. And certainly me being able to counter this leg being unweighted, I'm absolutely ready to kick from this position. But I should also feel a readiness here, although you might be tired, to just at any moment just explode out of that and move. So we can place this foot where we're going and then explode. I say explode and I step like a Tai Chi player, but you got the idea. So from here, checking in on the tracking, still bent in the knee, and here. So again, in cat stance, we're talking about that becoming small, that shrinking. I do want to be sinking in this, have a sense of a sink. So I drop the tail. The knee doesn't go beyond the ball of the foot. And so the knee achieves a bend, and the hip has a coincident bend in it, so that my center of gravity drops, but my alignment remains. So I don't drop the center and tip forward. Good. And as people challenge themselves to do a lower cat stance, they tend to tip forward quite a bit. I think what I'll do is I feel like I made a couple notes for this. Hi Patricia, hello. I'm wondering if I have them here or not. Yeah, now Joe, yeah. Oh yeah, that's one of the other ways to describe the stance, is a tricky leg stance, which I rather like. It's called Xuanji, but the Xuanji, what they call it, the tricky leg stance, is another name for it. But Xuan is this kind of idea that you'll see in Buddhism and Taoism of an arcane truth, right? Mystery within mystery, gateway to all understanding. And I kind of feel like, boy, that feels like cat to me as well. I mean, just looking at a cat is like, oh, you have the whole of existence figured out, don't you? You have everything figured out, such that, to such an extent and degree and depth, that you don't need to figure anything out, right? Like, just looking at a cat to me is like, oh, this whole experiment, life in the cosmos, like, you have you have nothing to learn, nothing to correct, nothing to confuse you. It's just all perfect. So that Xuan idea, in that I think it's used in some wushu, that type of language, Wanjibu. That arcane truth stance is also like a nice thing. And again, that might not register to you. You're a dog person, whatever. But maybe you listen to the story, got you to stand here for another 60 seconds. Right? So I'm going to turn to the last 30, checking in with the knee, maybe recommit to the sinking if I have a little bit more in me. Checking in, do I feel like, my chest is forward or my chest is over my hips? If it suddenly gets easier in your leg, you may very well have found yourself tipping, so that the work goes into the back and feels less into the leg. A good way I use for this is just check in. Am I naturally finding the horizon in my stances? Here I can find the horizon, but it's not natural. I'm working with my eyes, or my neck and my eyes, right? But if I naturally find the horizon, here I have my eyes closed, check in, knee, foot, pelvis, tailbone, shoulders, right? Spine, head, whatever I can do. And then open my eyes. Where do they naturally go? Are they a little below the horizon? Am I tipping forward? Are they a little above the horizon? Was I leaning back? So there's our cat stance. Good. And we'll just do one more little practice here. So I'm going to start with a little wider horse stance with my toes open and sink just a bit, dropping the tail, and then shift to one side, tracking the knee, shift to the other, tracking the knee. Now I'm trying to go a little bit lower than we've done previously. If you don't go this low, don't force yourself. Don't think of this as a challenge. Certainly I can go lower, just trying to find something that looked a little lower on camera, but not as low as I can go. And the idea is to practice tracking the knees, certainly, give myself a workout in the legs, but also check in, like, do I have an up as I go from side to side, or do I feel that I'm level as I go from side to side, right? So low, track the knee, particularly if you're tired. You could really often feel this urge to kind of come up a little and then resettle. But if I can stay the same level, side to side, I find good practice. Now to come out of a wider stance, I recommend chimneying. So I push one foot towards the other, that foot towards the other, this, and over, pushing the 2 feet towards the middle until I feel that they're under me. Often people in a low stance will kind of lurch to get out, and they can pull something that way, and they're certainly throwing themselves out of balance and hoping to recover. Another way, just use your hands and go down find your way all the way to the ground and then get yourself up the way you normally would. So it's a nice one to practice if you are getting into a wider leg stance. Just chimney your way out, mountain climbing terminology, but push off the side, push off the side, push off the side, and slowly working your feet in. Okay. My guess is few of you are joining me now, and I may stop asking for comments because I think people don't want to comment. So anyway, I'll post this afterwards. Thank you all. Love, and please practice.